Ryan, before we jumped on here, I'm scrolling through Twitter and I see that the city of Toronto has canceled all major events until the end of June. So that means we're nowhere close to the finish line here with this COVID-19 pandemic insanity.
Nah.
So on that note, buddy.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And I could give someone $1 if they guess the brand I'm drinking right now, and it's pretty easy. It's got a little acronym. It starts with a P and ends with an R. You gotta
PBR,
fill in
buddy.
the middle letter.
PBR.
Yeah,
Guessed
damn
it.
right. And
How are you doing? How are you coping with all this? I mean, this is like, honestly, man, like I've been working from home. I know I just asked you about yourself and now I'm going to talk about me, which is kind of classic Rob move, but like I've been working from home for 3 weeks, and yesterday, so Monday the 30th, was when it really sort of set in, and I was like, this is life for the next 6 months. Like this thing ain't going away, buddy.
No, it's not. You're not gonna put a date on it, and then you're just gonna wake up and be like, "Oh, okay, let's go back to being normal again." Like, no. This is gonna be a while. And dude, I have a problem, man. I have a serious issue that I need to address, and I got a couple days off work. Kind of like, do we go out work? Do we not go out work? Because I'm in residential construction. Kind of a gray area there, but I've been home for 5 days now, and there's one thing that is just killing me. And every day, I crack open my PBR, drink a couple, sit there, watch a show, think about the podcast, and then it just hits me. I'm just starving all day. I can't stop stuffing my face with food, man. Like, oh my God, it's a problem.
Ryan, it's the quarantine 15.
Dude, it's more than 15 at this point. Like, 15 was a week. Now you're looking at a while now, and dude, I can't stop eating. I'm starving. I just ate dinner. I'm still starving. Like, I thought beer was supposed to bloat you, not make you hungry again.
See, for me, it's like I miss the routine of going into the office, because it's like, you know, you get up, go to work, hit the gym after work, come home, have some dinner, sit and watch the Leafs, the Raptors, a show, go to bed, and then you wait for the weekend. You work for the weekend, as the song goes. But working from home every day, it's like me and the fiance look at each other around 5 o'clock, and we're like, you wanna have a glass of wine?
Yeah.
Yeah. Little. Can I interest you in a little glass of red?
Something.
And then we look at each other and we're like, this is every day now.
I miss,
What's
like, you go out, you work hard all day, and by the time you come home, like, you're starving. Because you had your breakfast, you had your lunch. When you had your lunch, it was like 12:30, 1 o'clock. So by the time you get home from all the work you've been doing, I'm just starving. So I just enjoy the dinner I have so much when I get home, and it just fills me right up. And here I am, just drinking beer like an idiot. I wish I had a video. You should see this beer gut I'm rocking right now. It is sickening. It is disgusting. Just every day, just gulp, 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 just adding on to it. And on top of that, I'm just starving all the time, stuffing my face. I will be at 230 by the time this thing is over. 230 lbs. I will be there.
The beers are a factor for me too, because I loaded up because I thought the LCBO was going to close, so I went and loaded up, as I talked about in our last episode. So got all these Buddy lattes sitting here now.
Oh, dude, I won $500 gift card on the beer store by entering a contest on Instagram. Thank you, the beer store, for granting me a winner of that contest. Greatest thing that's ever happened to me. So I go to the beer store, I load up like you did. I got jealous after the last podcast when you were bragging about it. So I run to the beer store, put my gloves on, have my sanitizer, even thought about a mask for a second. I go there, load up, was probably about a week ago. I go to my garage right now. It's gone. It's basically all gone. It's a problem at this point.
As someone who works, as you said earlier, in the gray area, what's your take on all these people who are just ignoring the government's mandate at this point to stay home?
I don't know, man. Like I feel bad for the like I'm under the umbrella of residential construction. So like a lot of these guys, like they're small companies who, like the jobs we do every week, it's like those jobs are everything. So it's like, yeah, you could shut down for a week.
No, I know that, but I'm talking about just the people who like aren't in that situation and are out at the park on the weekend kicking the ball around.
Like you gotta get your exercise, but you know when you're being dumb. There's a difference between going and get your exercise with the people you're living with, who you can be close to, and then just going to hang out with your buddies. Like on my Instagram, man, on my personal Instagram, I don't see a lot of people hanging out with other people. I see a lot of people at home bored.
No, I
don't really see anybody. I think for the most part, for the people I know, they've all been home. They've all been doing what they've been told to do, whether that's staying at a girlfriend, staying at their own house, whatever. Everything I've seen from my personal Instagram, it feels like people I know are listening.
A lot of Zoom chats.
Oh, crazy Zoom chats. The online videos of like the kids being little smart Alex in the Zoom chats. Like I'm tired of watching those already. I feel bad for those professors or teachers who have to deal with that.
Oh my God, man. If there was ever a time, and like I know that our listeners who have children are probably feeling it right now, but if there was ever a time where I'm like feeling grateful that I do not have the added responsibility of having a kid right now, man, like especially now that like school's done for the rest of the year.
Oh, 100%.
So it's like,
yeah, there's no way.
And now you're a parent and you're trying to figure out, a lot of people have been laid off and lost their jobs. So now you're trying to figure out like applying for EI through the Canadian government and like making sure your family is safe and blah, blah, blah. And now you got to add like homeschooling on top of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like no chance. If I had a kid right now, I would be like, okay, like I'll put this educational video on for you, but
yeah,
we got bigger fish to fry right now than long division.
Yeah, if you're in the first grade, it's like, what are you gonna Zoom your teacher?
Yeah,
you can't even pay attention for more than 10 minutes.
No, it's true.
Be doing that.
So with this announcement today that Toronto's banned all like festival style events until the end of June, there's some like gray area in there, as you said earlier. So I don't know if this applies to like Leaf games or whatever, but as this goes on, buddy, like I don't think they're coming back, dude. Like I don't see how you ask players to come back in June or July for the playoffs, then turn around and ask them to be back in camp in September. Unless you abbreviate next season and start it in like January, which I don't see the league wanting to do.
Which I heard some like rumors in the NBA that they've actually bounced that idea around. That maybe starting like later. Christmas time, like that 2013 mini lockout year that they had, just start later. I don't know. I agree with you. I'm looking at like August at this point. I
also saw a story kicking around about the NBA where someone was proposing the idea of them doing all the playoffs in like one centralized location.
Yeah.
So like all the teams play in like Vegas or something. But to me, I don't get how that works, because if a player gets COVID and has been in that building, you got to shut the building down.
Yeah, dude, nobody knows. Like, forget sports, man. Like, just forget about sports even. Look at the cases in the United States. Like, just just raising every single day,
skyrocketing. Oh yeah,
just huge, man. Like, I don't like who's gonna make this decision. Like, I don't. It's not worth it.
Agreed.
I just like we'll be here twiddling our thumbs because I think you're right. I don't think it's happening.
I agree 100% because it's like people have asked me these last couple of weeks, like, "Oh, are you missing the Leafs?" And it's like, yeah, of course I miss the Leafs, but at the same time, it's like my head is not in sports right now. Like I'm not sitting here like thinking about the Leafs all day, every day. It's like I'm thinking about my family. I'm thinking about staying employed and what my plan is. Should I get laid off? Like a lot of other people have had to deal with. Like that's like you're still out working. Like so I'm worried about you, making sure you're okay. And like our parents are right in the window. Just I'm sure like everyone else's parents are right in the window where they're like the vulnerable part of the population. So it's like that's where my head is at. My head is not really at, oh man, I want to see the Leafs play their last 12 games of the regular season or whatever. Like it's just not.
Yeah, it's far. It seems far gone at this point.
Yeah.
It seems like it ended a while ago.
Yeah, it does.
And
it does.
And it's just what's the point of even coming back? Like I get the entertainment, I get that maybe the TV ratings for some companies, but if they did come back, there'd be no one in attendance. And if there's no one in attendance, then it's just weird and it doesn't look good.
That's what I'm saying, man.
Like, what's the point of coming back and playing with no attendance? Like, it looks awful. Like, it's not a good look, man. Yeah.
Call it a day on this season and come back next year with a clean slate.
Yeah, like, this isn't your fault, NHL or NBA or MLB. They're kind of a weird spot, the MLB, but for the NBA and the NHL, it's like, dude, this isn't your fault. Like, there's nothing you could do here. Like, guys were having amazing seasons. There was so close to the playoffs, but like, you're just dealing with something you've never dealt with in your entire life. So,
well, speaking about,
we can let it go.
Today's topic is going to be about Auston Matthews, and he's got 47 goals, bro. Like, he's going to end this season 3 away from 50 goals.
With 12 games left.
Yeah, with 12 games left. He was going to get it for sure.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like, that's, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know about for sure, but.
Can I get something off my chest about Major League Baseball and why it remains fourth?
I'll give you my take.
On my list.
I'll give you my take quick before you start.
Okay. Yeah, it's just like
worst sport around, bud.
If I had to rank the big four, baseball comes fourth, and I'll tell you why. Because baseball people are so ridiculous. Like, if baseball comes back, let's just say they come back in like June or July, okay? And they play a 120-game season. That's fantastic. And then you see these baseball people, like Ross Atkins, being like, well, we should do 2 7-inning doubleheaders so we can play the full 162. And it's like, that's just so baseball. Like, you just can't handle not playing the full 162.
Traditionalists.
Like, 120-game season is great. Right off the bat, the games, no pun intended, the games
season's
matter.
Great.
Yeah, like, the games matter right away. We don't need 162.
If you had to play, say you had to play 60 games, you know what I would do? I would just play your own division for 60 games. Just
call it a day.
Just play your own division. Whoever wins your division wins the division. Still count the wild cards. But see, that's the only sport around where you could play with no fans and you won't notice. You know why? Because it's boring. It's the most boring sport on planet Earth. No adrenaline, no nothing. You could play that game with nobody in the stands, and you wouldn't tell a difference. Hell, go down to Tropicana. It's basically that every single day. Head down to the Rogers Center on a Tuesday night. It's like nobody's there.
Anyway, little side rant there about baseball, but I just...
Yeah, it's a joke. Traditionalists. No, thank you.
I don't see the NHL coming back. I just don't.
No.
I think this will be the forgotten season. And, like, does this count as a year on everybody's contract? Like, I know what the answer is. The answer is going to be yes, but, like, you're paying Auston Matthews $11.6 for 5 years, and now 1 year is just gone.
Yep. That's a good
and
point.
You could make the argument that, like, they probably weren't going to win the cup this year anyway, so what difference does it make? And I'll grant you that. But, like, 1 year's just gone. Patty Marleau got traded to the Pittsburgh Penguins to try and go on a cup run. Nope.
Yeah, it's like the difference this time is it's not like a labor dispute. It's like, no, you need to stay at home so you don't get sicky. It's different. Like, if I'm an NHL player right now, hell, some of these guys have young children that they wouldn't have gotten any time to spend time with if it wasn't for this little quarantine here. I guarantee you some of these guys look back on their lives and they're almost like appreciative of have the time they spent with their young child. You see it on Instagram. All these guys are having kids. And it's like you're having like a mini vacation right now. I don't really understand what the pay is or what they're going to do with the wages, or are they still getting paid in full? I don't know. But if you're making as much money as these guys are making, you should be good. But if I'm an NHL player, like, I know we always stress like heart and determination and being there for the boys, but I'd be pretty pumped to just be home right now. I'm going to be honest.
If everyone you knew had their health.
Yeah, it's like, what, we're going to go back and play and just risk everybody's health? Like, that's ridiculous. You can't do that.
It is ridiculous. No, you can't do that. Ryan, this week's topic du jour for the Talkin' Buds podcast is the one, the only, number 34, Auston Matthews. Tons of great feedback, tons of great suggestions. One of them that caught my eye was just having a general discussion about Auston Matthews, and that's what we're going to do today. I thought a lot about how we want to go about doing this, and I was like, should I like do a timeline of all his moments?
Well, I thought you wanted to do a timeline, though.
No, you know what, Ryan? One of the things I pride myself on and ourselves on this podcast is how we're upfront with our listeners and the people who support us. There are some podcasts who can like do like a chronological timeline of things, and they can just do it, and it's good listening. I don't think that that's where we're at our best. I think you and I are at our best when we're just having a discussion. And I took some stuff down, and we are going to go through certain dates, important dates in the Matthews era, but we're not going to sit here and go through Matthews' entire career as a Maple Leaf, like in super minutia. How do you feel?
You don't want to go through first season 82 games, second season 62, third season 68, and this season 70. You don't want to go through every single one of those games, analyze every shift he was out on the ice for.
Ryan, there are a lot of people, and this is not a diss to them, whatever turns your crank, but there are a lot of people who would relish the opportunity to do that, and you and I just aren't them. And we've never professed to be those types of people. So,
well, I'm going to be honest.
We're talking buds, buddy.
That's boring.
Yeah, that is boring.
Boring. I like Auston Matthews, but at the end of the day, the guy's done a whole lot of nothing other than score a lot of goals in the NHL.
So, I do want to reminisce a little bit here, because it was a big deal when the Leafs got Auston Matthews, Ryan. Like, I remember where I was when they got the first overall pick. I remember where I was when they drafted him, and we'll get to that. But none of that would have been possible, Ryan, if the Leafs didn't execute what people have dubbed a dignified tank in the 2015-2016 season, finishing with a record of 29, 42, and 11. The first season with Mike Babcock as head coach. I want to ask you first, what do you remember about that year?
It's the greatest tank in the history of tanks.
Oh, yeah.
There's no better tank.
Every game. Yep, for sure.
No better tank. And I feel like their image at that point as a franchise was already so down in the dumps and have already taken such a hit. And we're already such a laughing stock of the league that Yeah, and it's like they were awful. So like almost fans who weren't paying attention were like, "Oh, look at the Leafs, they're garbage." But while everybody in this market was like, look at this tank. Like this is a serious. Any guy who can stop a puck on this team, we are no longer putting in the net. We have Peter Holland, good guy Peter Holland. I'm not taking a low blow at him, but he was first line. We had Mike Grabner. We had Leo Komarov going to the All-Star game. We had Ryan Parenteau as our leading scorer.
Byron Fraze.
Yeah, it was about
Tobias Lindbergh. Victor Louvre.
Yeah, it was tough, man. Honestly, it wasn't
good
tough.
Good guy, Matty Hunwick.
Oh, he was a legend. No doubt.
Sean Matthias. Did you say him already?
No, but
no.
The thing I will say about this tank is for people who weren't diehard Leaf fans, it was like a good way to like poke fun at them. But everybody who's a diehard Leaf fan knew exactly what they were doing, wanted them to do exactly what they were doing to get exactly what we got. So I was not pissed at all during that whole thing. I actually enjoyed it.
That was such a memorable year for me because that was the year where it's like you knew what they were doing. So I'd watch the games, but like not very closely because you're like, no one on this roster, with the exception of Morgan Riley at the time, and Freddie the Goat was there too, like is going to be here in the future. So I'm not going to sit here. Yeah, I'm not going to sit here and
they drafted Willie Nylander that year too.
Yep. I'm not going to sit here and invest my time and emotion into every game night in and night out when the goal is to come 30th. So that was interesting. Like, it was like I'm watching the games, and I'm just sort of watching them. Like now when I watch games, and for as long as I can remember, I'm really paying attention to who's on the ice, what they're doing, like what the line combinations are, what the defense pairings are, like how the goalie's playing, like who's on power play 1, who's on PK number 1. Like I was not invested in any of that season.
No, and it went by fast, man. Like just I can't even remember that season. I as far as I can remember, I remember Leo Komarov going to the All-Star game. Other than that, I can't recall one game of that season. But they had a plan.
So, 5 minutes ago, I said I wasn't going to throw dates out, but now I'm going to throw a date out. April 30th, 2016. It came down to the Leafs, Blue Jackets, and Winnipeg Jets as the final 3 picks in the draft, or the top 3 picks in the draft, I should say. The Leafs, obviously, secure that first spot. Ryan, do you remember where you were? Do you remember what you were doing?
I was in my living room and I was bawling my eyes out, basically.
Yeah. I was at a restaurant with our mom and stepdad in the bar watching Bill Daly flip the card over, and then the whole place erupted.
Yeah,
I watched that today. I watched that today on YouTube. I still get goosebumps watching it.
Yeah, that was I can't even, like, hindsight 2020, looking at Matthew's stats in front of me, whatever, but I can't even lie. Like I actually remember that moment just being the happiest guy on planet Earth, and I'm sure I wasn't the only one, but it was like the coolest thing ever at that time. You got Babcock, you went through a year, now you got the number 1 overall pick, which you look at this franchise's history, and one thing they seriously lack is guys who are young and can turn around a franchise. So to me, it's a top just 5 like Leaf moment.
Impressive draft picks. Like I know some Leaf historian, someone who follows it way closer than me, like their draft history is gonna lose it on me for this. But like prior to that, it's like they drafted Morgan Riley. And like who before Riley that made any sort of like real impact? Like was it Wendell?
Yeah, I guess. Like, honestly, I don't know. Like they've always been a team that has. I can't really speak for 80s, 70s, 60s Leafs. Like when we really started paying attention to the Leafs, it was 90s, and it was always about bringing in. Well, they got Mats when he was pretty young, but they didn't draft him.
No, they didn't draft him. They traded him to.
Yeah, they got Dougie through
Quebec
trade.
Nordique. They traded Wendell to the Quebec Nordique to get Mats.
Yeah, and then they get Dougie through a trade. They get Cujo through a trade. I guess they got Potvin as a rookie.
Oh yeah. He came in as a rookie.
But other than that, it was always like trade for a guy. Think about the early 2000s. They go get Owen Nolan. They go get Brian Leach. They go get Jeff O'Neill. They go get like Darcy Tucker. Like Joe Newendike, Gary Roberts.
They've been playing classic games on Sportsnet the last couple of weeks. They played one of the playoff games against the Ottawa Senators when the Leafs roster. Dude, it is a crime that team did not win a Stanley Cup in those years.
It was the 04 year. It was the year.
Team was stacked.
It was the year where they got dusted out by Roenick in the second round.
Oh yeah. No, and then they had another year where they made it to the conference final against the Hurricanes and lost to Artie Urbe.
Yeah, but their team wasn't as good. That was 2 years prior. I don't think their team was as good then than it was the year they got dusted by Roenick in the sixth game. Yeah, dude, terrible. They just never had any defense. I didn't want to get into it. On to Auston Matthews.
Another date, June 24th, 2016. Where were you when Mark Hunter, the now departed, and by that I mean back with the London Knights, Mark Hunter announced that the Leafs were drafting Auston Matthews? Before you even answer that, sorry, bad habit of mine. I watched some video today, like recounting all the events leading up to them drafting Matthews. Do you remember the amount of people who were like, Matthews are like,
yeah, 100%.
What?
Yeah.
What? Like, that is a joke to even put Line A in the same. It's a joke. Put a one-dimensional guy like Line A. And I know, like, we'll talk about Matthews a little later and have some expectations we still have for him, but I'm sorry. Like, anyone who is pulling for Line A, you need your head examined.
Yeah, I agree. I somewhere along the way, I think it was maybe the Chicago Cup run. It might have started with Sid, but it was somewhere along the way with that Taves-Kane Cup run, the idea of just getting a number one centerman just became the biggest deal of all time. So for that draft, you're looking at a high-scoring, high-powered winger, or just now that we know, a high-scoring, high-powered center. Like, you're gonna take the center every day of the week. That's just TSN and Sportsnet. You got a lot of time to fill. And there's not much to fill it with when it comes to hockey. So if you got to run with a story, you run with a story.
Yep. So they draft Matthews, and then October 12th, 2016, his first game ever. They lose 5-4 in overtime to the Ottawa Senators, and Matthews gets all 4 goals.
Now, this is a day I remember where I was.
Yes.
I finished work around 7 o'clock, and my girlfriend was living downtown by then, and I was in Newmarket, so that's about a 50-minute drive up there. And I remember I got in my car halfway through the first, and by the time I got to her place, it was the beginning of the third period, and I listened to every single goal on the radio called by Joe Bowen, which is not a horrible thing. If anybody's going to make you feel like you're not missing out, it's definitely Joe Bowen. Yes. So to hear his calls on the radio during that was phenomenal. So it was like getting there, knowing what already happened, finding all the replays of how it happened, being the most excited guy on planet Earth. Because at that time, it's like, I'm the biggest Auston Matthews fan on planet Earth. This is all we've been waiting for. This is all we've been clamoring about. We had Phil Kessel. All we wanted was a number one center, and this was finally it. And the guy literally goes out and has the single greatest debut of all time. It is
in NHL
number
history.
one.
Yeah.
The greatest debut into the league in the history of the game for the franchise that is the number one go-getter in terms of financials, in the franchise that is the number one sad sack loser. And it was just like, finally we have a guy. The hype, it wasn't like, we're 10 games in, Matthews doesn't have a goal. 4 in one game. Like, it seemed like it was just destiny, and everything else moving forward was going to be the greatest thing ever.
The way I want to handle this now going forward, we've covered off the key dates of him becoming a Maple Leaf. Let's just throw out some of our favorite memories. I'll go first. From his rookie season, 2016-2017, his 2-goal performance in the Heritage Classic against the Red Wings. Second goal was in OT. I still, another game they had on Sportsnet a couple weeks ago that I watched. Dude, their team, I'm going to say it. Their team in that game would have pwned the Leaf team this year.
100%.
Wouldn't, not even close.
And back then, we would have ripped JVR. We would have ripped Bozak. We would have ripped Komarov. Yep. We would have ripped Kadri. But if you look back on it, this is what happens when you have to pay guys in the NHL. You got to lose guys like that.
Yep.
You got to be JVR scoring over 30 a year on the second or third line for 2 years.
I'm just watching that JVR Bozak Marner line wheel and deal in the offensive zone, and I'm just like, they don't do this anymore.
No, and you look at the early Chicago years where they had Bufflin, Sharp, Versteeg, Taves, Kane, just loaded, and then every year it just went a little lower and lower and lower and less pumped up, and the line's just depleted, and that's what's happening to this team. Because it's funny that you say that, but if you actually look back on that team, they had some legit lines, legit lines. At the end of the day, they were all soft.
Let's pull their roster up right now from.
Leafs. You're pulling up the roster. One thing I can tell you right now, the difference between that team and this team, there's one thing they have in common. They were still soft. They had Leo Komarov. They had Nazem Kadri. Everyone else was still soft. Bozak was soft. JVR was soft. Matthews is soft.
Second of all, I'm an idiot, and I called it the Heritage Classic. It was the 100th game. It was the Centennial Classic.
That's fine.
So
no one cares.
Stupid me.
No one cares about that.
So let's find. Let me find their roster listed out here.
They have Patty Marleau that year?
No, they didn't have Patty Marleau yet. No, they didn't have Patty Marleau yet. Yeah, they didn't have Patty Marleau
Matthews,
yet. They had
Nylander, Hyman, Bozak, Van Riemsdyk, Marner. They would have had Kadri, Komarov, and fill out the rest of the 4 after that. I can't remember them off the top of my head. They brought in Brian Boyle late.
Yeah, they did. That was the year they brought in Boiler. Great unis too. Not as great as the unis that they wore at the Big House.
Good pro.
Yeah, but
the unis Boiler. They wore, the most recent one are garbage.
The
white.
The white ones? Oh yeah, that was in the outdoor game.
Ugh.
In Washington a couple years ago.
Garbage uniforms. Oh, those are actually my least favorite Maple Leaf uniforms of all time. I don't think they've ever made a worse version of a Maple Leaf uniform than that one. That one is god awful. Florida Panthers, Toronto Maple Leafs mashup. Ugh. Terrible.
Okay, ready? Forwards. Zach Hyman, Connor Brown, Matt Martin, who was wearing no visor. I noticed that the other day.
That's a great
Matt
one.
Martin, Mitch Marner, James Van Riemsdyk, Nikita Shoshnikov, William Nylander, Freddie the Goat.
Shoshnikov.
Yep. William Nylander, Freddie the Goat, Auston Matthews, Tyler Bozak, Nazem Kadri, Leo Komarov. On defense, good guy Matty Hunwick, Connor Carrick, Nikita Zaitsev, Morgan Riley, Roman Polak, and Jake Gardner. Freddie Anderson in the net.
Yeah, it's a better lineup. What else can you say?
I mean, there, like it just is. Like I know there's people who are gonna freak out when they hear us say that, but like,
I mean, at the end of the day, like the main thing they have in common with now is that it was still a soft hockey team, and they were still a little weak on defense. Nothing much has really changed. They could score a lot of goals then. They can score a lot of goals now. They couldn't defend much then. They can't defend much now. So at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, they might have a little more talent, a little more star power, name value up front. But thinking back to it, same problems then, same problems now.
Another favorite memory of mine from his rookie year was the playoff goal in Game 6 against the Capitals, a game they ultimately lost. But again, fire that highlight up on YouTube. Outstanding. Wins the Calder Trophy.
40 goals.
Yep, 40 goals, 29 assists in his rookie year.
It's legit. That you can't get any more legit than that, man. That end of that season, losing to the Capitals in that first round, it was like, okay, cool. Like this is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to lose in the first round when you're learning, you're gaining experience. And the next year you can get better, and then the next year you can get even better. And the next year your season gets suspended by COVID-19.
Looking at everything today, the 2017-2018 season, his sophomore year, is like the forgotten year of Auston Matthews. Like I fired up 2017-2018 highlights. First of all, he missed 20 games. He had 3 different minor injuries that year. Remember, he had a wrist injury in there, a couple upper bodies.
Hey, 2 years in a row. Like I don't want to get too far ahead, but those 2 middle years, it was pretty. He didn't miss a lot. I thought he missed a lot more than he did, looking back at the games played. But it was still, it seemed like a chunk, and it took a chunk out of his statistics. That's for sure.
The NHL has some really great like individual player highlight packs on YouTube. I highly recommend if you guys are looking for something to check out, hit those up. Those are really good. One of the things I remembered in watching one of them today was his second greatest celly of all time. He has a goal called back for goalie interference against the Colorado Avalanche, and then scores again later and turns and does the good goal gesture right beside the referee.
Yeah.
I had that as like my Twitter background photo for a year and a half.
That second, actually no, that second year, even though he missed 20 games, but he still had plus 25 that year. That's pretty legit.
Yep.
Like he still had a pretty good year. I actually found the next year he only missed 14 games, but he that year, I don't know, those 2 years seem a little forgotten, I guess. I don't know, you're right.
Well, the first time he faced like real criticism, Ryan, I wanted to make a note of saying this today, was in his second year in the first round series against the Bruins.
Oh, it's
he
garbage.
had 1 goal and 1 assist in 7 games that year. And the Bruins, like, and I'm not going to sit here and say that he played like garbage. Like, the Bruins are the Bruins, and they just turned him into a non-factor. But, like, 2 points in 7 games. And that was the first time I remember, like, the media going after him a little bit, and people starting to say, like, we need some more from you here, bud.
Yeah. And that's when the trip down to Arizona happened. For Mikey
yes.
boy.
Yes, that offseason.
Yeah, because he was ghost town in that series. And the immediate blame game went to my favorite Maple Leaf right now, who at the time was not my favorite Maple Leaf. At the time, I was actually in Matthews' corner saying that they should get this guy off his line. And that's when the trippy down to Arizona went down.
That's right. That's right. Good memory.
Because he was awful that series, man. He was terrible.
That's what I'm saying. He was a non-factor.
Garbage.
He was a non-factor.
And what made me remember that is when you texted me and you're like, let's think about all like the Matthews things we can think of. And I'm just like, I remember him in the last playoff series against the Bruins. He was phenomenal. He was amazing. And then I remember the year before, he was like this. He was garbage that year. And then they had that whole debacle with Mike and him and Hyman and getting him the right players to play with. And it's just, If and you think that year was such a disappointment too, because they go out to the Capitals and then they get to Game 7 with the Bruins, and we don't need to talk about what happened there, but it's just like, okay, learning experience, and then they just stop dead, and they made it one game further, and they just stop dead in their tracks again.
Yep. They come back for the 2018-2019 season, and Ryan, one of the early games in the season was the epic showdown, which I think a lot of people consider the most entertaining game of the Matthews era, was the showdown between him and Patty Kane, where they each scored 2 goals. Matthews, I said earlier, the goal against the Avalanche was his second most epic celly. His most epic celly came in this game when he did the Hulk Hogan ear grab after
he did the
second
Patty
goal.
Kane imitation.
Yep, and then moments later, Patty Kane returns the favor. And that was epic television.
It was a little bit of pro wrestling in there, especially with 2 American-born hockey players. But I remember that game being so cool too, because it was still early in the Johnny T Maple Leaf era. So like he potted a couple that didn't he score the OT winner? I'm pretty sure. I think he did, but him chipping in that game too was like just as exciting as seeing Matthews and Kane go head to head. I actually agree. I think that is one of the most entertaining games of the era for sure.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Another great memory that I fired up on YouTube today was the OT winner against Buffalo with 2.7 seconds left. Like that to me is like the quintessential Auston Matthews highlight. Like if you're watching a story on SportsCenter or Sportsnet Central about Auston Matthews, in their little highlight reel that they play, that goal will always be in there. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
No, I can't put my finger on the one you're talking about, to be honest with you. I'm trying to remember it, but there's
scores to beat Buffalo in Buffalo with 2.7 seconds left in OT.
There's so many different things like in my head, good goals he scored, which is something to be said about the way he's played, because if I can remember that many and I can almost forget a great moment, then it shows you how many good moments he's actually had.
So this is where the conversation is going to shift a little bit, because last year he signs his contract extension, and it was 5 years with an AAV of 11.6. And the deal is largely criticized because the fans feel it was yet another example of Kyle Dubas bowing to players' demands due to the 5-year term. I think we all got our heads around the fact that Matthews was going to get somewhere in the 11 to 12 range, but I think the 5-year term was what was frustrating.
Yep.
For some people. Like in hindsight, we talked a little bit about this last week, but let's go through it again. In hindsight, what do you think about that?
I think it's still a terrible deal. I've thought about it. There's just no excuse for it. I just don't remember a high class player signing for that little of term for that much money. I don't. It's the first time that it's happened. Connor McDavid didn't do that. Sid didn't do that. Ovi didn't do that, unless I'm mistaken, but I'm almost 100% sure they didn't do that. And he's in that level. He's in that top 5. Whether do I think he's a top 5 skilled player in the world? No, but when it comes to name value and star power and guys you think of when you think of the NHL, I think he is in the top 5. And those guys get paid a lot of money, but the difference is those guys get paid 7-8 years. In 5 years, it was just Kyle Dubas just getting spanked, in my opinion, by Auston Matthews' agent and his camp over what they wanted. He literally got bent over and spanked. And I think it's a horrible deal. I not for 1 second do I think that's an acceptable deal. I think it's garbage. It was no good.
When it's all said and done, do you see him re-signing here, or do you see him wanting to go play somewhere else?
I don't know, man. I think it just depends on what happens over the next 4 years, because this year's down the drain.
I think it's a roll of the dice, because I think as an American-born player, there probably is a part of him that wants to play somewhere in the U.S., and that makes sense. Like, I'm not going to begrudge him. However, one thing we do know about Auston Matthews is he likes the celebrity side of being a pro athlete. And there is nowhere in the National Hockey League where you are a bigger celebrity than in Toronto.
I've never, ever, ever bought into the hype of him just caring so much about being a U.S. hockey player that he has to go play in the U.S. The only two places he can go in the U.S. are to Arizona to be a little hero to all the kids in the awful hockey market and be a good story, or he can go to the Rangers or LA Kings. Other than that, like, I don't see any other option. Like, I just don't get, I've never bought into the US hype at all. I don't believe in that. I believe all his decisions are going to be based off his experiences.
I think there's something to it.
And when his time it has come to re-sign a deal, there better be a coach he likes there, and there better be a GM he likes there, and a player he likes playing with. Because if there's not, then that's what's going to make him leave.
I understand that, but I think Americans in their nature are very patriotic, and I think it is a factor, right? Like, I do. Like, I don't. Is it like this massive, overwhelming thing? I don't know. But do I think it is a factor and it plays a role? Yes, I do.
If you want to go be a celebrity in the NHL, you got to play three places. You got to play in Toronto, you got to play in Montreal, or you got to play for the Rangers. That's it. That is it.
What about the Boston Bruins?
You're not. That is not a market that can dictate being famous. Like, yeah, you could be famous within the city, but why not go to New York and do that and be on Jimmy Fallon one night? I'm sure Henrik Lundqvist has been on Jimmy Fallon or whatever shows out of New York. I'm sure he's been on Saturday Night Live. Like, if you're talking about celebrity and being buddies with a celebrity, like, first of all, the guy he's buddies with is the #1 artist on Spotify right now, whether you like him or not. So if you really care about celebrity, it's those three places. And you can almost exclude Montreal from that because Montreal's such a bubble. But like Toronto, New York Rangers, like that's it for me. Like I think the whole US thing is so overhyped. I don't think it's a thing. I think it's going to be based on experience here. Does he like the coach? Does he like the GM? Does he have a player to play with? To me, that's what's going to dictate him re-signing.
He would finish the 2018-2019 season with 37 goals and 36 assists in 68 games played. His most significant injury of his career came that year too. Do you remember, Ryan? He in a game at home against the Winnipeg Jets, he gets hit in the shoulder by Jacob Trouba, and he misses 4 weeks. And some could argue, / would argue that he's never quite been the same since that injury. From just like a dominating perspective.
Yeah, I think if you look at the stats after this shortened season, I think that's kind of out the window.
Yeah. Agreed. I think this season put that argument to rest. Last summer, he was put on the cover of NHL 20, or as you would call it, Shell.
I haven't played that video game since 2012, probably.
Why is that?
It's an awful video game. No offense to the NHL, no offense to EA Sports and everyone who makes that game. If you go play NBA 2K and you have a little run in the park with your created player and playing the whole immersive career mode in that game, there's a reason why you never go play NHL again after that. It's an awful video game.
So you're saying that NBA 2K is the greatest sports video game going today?
Oh, 100%. I don't think there's a video game even close to it. Not even close. That is the GOAT of video games for sports.
So we're not going to sit here and go into depth about this season that's currently on hold. Like, if you want to hear our thoughts about all the Matthews moments, there's tons of episodes so far this season, so feel free to go back and listen to those. At the time of the season being suspended, as we said earlier, he's sitting at 47 goals and 33 assists. He would have gotten 50. Based on what we said earlier on, I don't think he's going to get there because I don't think the season is coming back. I wanted to touch on this before we call it quits for this week, Ryan. We've voiced our first frustration with him a bit this year, and we've said on paper that doesn't make sense because the numbers are there. However, we've waited for him to go to that quote unquote McDavid level, and he hasn't gone there a whole heck of a lot. So you're Ryan Furnish. You're looking in your crystal ball. Where does Auston Matthews go from here?
Well, he's not Connor McDavid, that's for sure. He doesn't play like him. He doesn't skate like him. He doesn't pass like him. But one thing he does do better than Connor McDavid is score goals. And I think statistically, I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but he probably is the best 5-on-5 goal scorer since he's entered the league. He is just, it's just the puck finds him on the ice. It's just, there's no other way to explain it. When you're as gifted as a goal scorer as he is, just the puck finds him. And he's got one of the best wrist shots in the league. And one thing this guy's going to do in his NHL career, whether he plays 82 games a season or 60 games a season, he's going to score goals. And he's going to score a lot of goals 5-on-5. And if he ever figures it out on the power play, as much as Ovi has or Stamkos has or any prolific goal scorer on the power play, he's going to be one of the most dangerous hockey players to ever step on the ice when it comes to putting the puck in the net. Another thing I know about Auston Matthews is I'm looking at his stats right now. His first year, he had 14 penalty minutes. The next 2 years, he had 12, and this year he's 8. He's probably one of the softest 6'3", 220-pounders to ever play in the league. Right up there with James Van Riemsdyk. And that is what frustrates so many Leaf fans like me and you, or like all the other guys who tend to be a little more old school than analytic, is big boy. He's a dream. He's a huge center who could score goals, and if he really wanted to, he could go a little Lindros.
I'm really glad you brought that up, because when I say that there's still another level that I think he can go to, that's what I mean. And do I think that Auston Matthews is going to play like Eric Lindros? No. But do I think he's a big man and can dominate a little bit more physically? Yes, I do. And do I think that will add another level to his game? Yes. Like, you saw it. I'm going to reference it for the 5th time on here since it happened. The game against Florida a month ago. Goes behind the net, bangs a guy, gets the puck, it's in the net. Like, and I'm hoping that being 22 years old, like, it's something that has to, like, click, because you're out there playing against, like, men. So it's intimidating. I get it. But that's the level I want him to go to. So I'm really glad you brought that up.
Yeah, and it pisses me off too, because like, look at one of his best friends off the ice is Matthew Tkachuk, and look at that guy. That guy was 19. He didn't give a shit about size difference or being intimidated, and we've said it since day one of this podcast. I guarantee if you go back to the first episode of this podcast, we gave the rant we've probably given the most out of any rant on this pod, and that's: you don't need to be a fighter. You don't need to be dropping your gloves. You just need to forecheck and use your body. And that's toughness. And that is him in a nutshell. It's, bro, if you just go in and just lean on a guy a little bit, like, it's a world. Look at Ovi, bro. Like that guy destroys guys. He's not a fighter. He doesn't drop his gloves. Yeah. He just sees his spots and he dummies guys because he's a big boy. Yeah. And he wasn't a hitter when he got in the league. He learned that over time. And
that's what I'm saying. I'm hoping it's a level that he can eventually
get to. It's like that is the next level. That is how you dominate this game. If you're already considered a top 5 player or a top 10 player by guys who analyze this league, then if you add that to your game, you're almost guaranteed to be top 3. Like, that's all you need. And that's what you're missing out of him. That's simple as that. The guy can score as much as anybody. Nicer wrist shot than anybody. Puck finds him better than anybody. But until he starts leaning on some dudes, if he ever figures that out, then that's what's going to take him to legendary status in this league.
Yeah. And I think it's really as simple as that. Like, if you look at him and you look at his game, like, that's the only element that's really missing, because the numbers are there. So it's like, it's not like you can sit here and go, well, if he does this and then if he does that, it's like, it's one element that he needs to add.
Yeah.
And that'll take him to where we all want him to be.
Yeah, he's a 4-tool player. The old baseball 5-tool player. He's a 4-tool player. He's just missing the physicality. Just go, dude. You're a man. You got testosterone. You got nuts. Like, just go hit somebody.
Dude, every year, he's going to be in the conversation for the Rocket Richard Trophy. And I'm going to say it again. I want him in the conversation for the Hart. That's where I want him. Like, he is picking this team up, putting them on his back, and dragging them to a Stanley Cup. That's what Sid's done. That's what Taves and Kane have done. That's what I'm sure Connor McDavid is eventually going to do, now that they have some competent management.
And they got Leon Draisaitl too.
Yeah. So you know what? Maybe it is a combo like a Taves and Kane. It's him and Nylander or him and Marner.
Yeah.
Like,
I need a wingman.
Cool. I'm okay with that. Like, go for it. But, like, look down the bench and say, enough is enough. I'm taking this game over. And that's the is it going to click? Is that going to click? Like, there's no guarantee if it's going to or not. But we, from watching other players' careers and watching all sports, not even just the NHL, the NBA, the NFL, like, until you have that, like, F this, I'm going to go take over this game because I can, because I'm the baddest man on this ice when I want to be. Like, that's where he goes into, like, legendary, not even Leaf fame, just Hockey Hall of Fame, just legendary stuff. Like, that is the level he needs to hit to become a legend. And it could happen, it could not. Who knows? I think that's a great spot to finish up on this week, Ryan. Any last thoughts from yourself? Anything else you want to touch on?
No.
Before we call it quits this week, or is that it for you?
I'm almost done my PBR here, so.
So you got to go get a top up.
Yeah, it's almost time for a top up, so that means I got to leave the room, which means I got to turn off my microphone, or else I don't know what's going to come out of here.
Yeah. Once again, I just want to say to everybody, thank you so much for downloading and sticking with us. Hope you're keeping safe out there. Wash your damn hands. Do everything you got to do. Don't be out. Social distancing, all that stuff. It's all important. Don't forget, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. Hit that follow button. Massive, massive help to us. We really, really appreciate it. Thank you guys for sticking with us, even during this really unpredictable time. We really appreciate it, and you're the reason why we're still doing these shows. So thank you very much. We'll catch you guys next week.